Mr. Shapiro, you talked about white privilege, and just this week, I had a conversation with Rachel Lazar, who's done some work, a Jewish American woman who's done some work on this area, as well as having extensive conversations with Dr. Greg Parks of Wake Forest University, who's also talked quite a bit about critical race theory.
So here's the setup. A congresswoman comes at Ben Shapiro with the classic left-wing playbook: white privilege, critical race theory, societal advantages, the whole 9 yards. She's citing researchers. She's name-dropping professors from Wake Forest University. She's referencing conversations with Jewish American scholars on race theory. She clearly did her homework, or at least she thinks she did. And look, I'll give her credit for one thing. She at least tried to reframe white privilege as something that isn't about silencing white people. She says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that white privilege is just about societal advantage, not about telling white people they can't speak. Fine. Okay. But here's the problem with that framing, and Ben nails it. The moment you tell someone their opinion is shaped entirely by the color of their skin, you have already dismissed what they have to say. You could dress it up however you want, but that's the logical conclusion of the argument.
And it's my understanding that white privilege is not telling individuals that they cannot speak, but it is a term for societal privilege that individuals have as a benefit of their white skin. And I don't think that, and I think universities would be remiss to then say that because you're white, you're not allowed to say anything that's critical of white people. I didn't know that white privilege actually went into that sphere. My understanding is it's just, and the issue is that white privilege makes people uncomfortable to talk about the societal privilege that they have.
Well, to me, what I say on campuses all the time is if you want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I'm more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just say that there is a white privilege out there in the ether and that by dint of birth your skin color generates for you an advantage, what you're really saying to people is that your view is less valuable because you have not experienced what I've experienced. And that is an identity argument, that's a character argument, that's not a rational political argument that can actually be taken on in any way. It's more of a cudgel and a club than it is an attempt to open a discussion.
Well, I think it's a demonstrable evidence that through society's demographics that being white has societal privileges that being black does not. But
we can talk about how that manifests, because that's
I'm also interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African-American young students, would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
As I say, I would. This is the first I'm hearing about it, honestly. But
really,
yeah. But from hearing about it, maybe because it's local. I mean, I'm from LA. But in any case, I'm more than happy to stand alongside her and fight whatever group was responsible for this. Not only more than happy. I mean, you're talking about the alt-right. Again, I was the #1 target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year. So I'm more than happy to do all that. And I think there's one more distinction that has to be made. When we talk about cases like Taylor's, they're horrific, and the administration is siding with Taylor. Okay, the administration is doing the right thing by Taylor, or trying to do the right thing by Taylor, as they should be. And I think that we need to make a distinction between cases where the administration is actively participating in the suppression of speech and cases in which the administration is trying to do the right thing in order to punish people for application of crime.
Now let's talk about what Ben actually said, because this is where it gets really good. He makes a distinction that the left absolutely refuses to make, and that is the difference between specific, documented racism and this vague, floating concept of white privilege out in the ether, as he put it. And I agree with him 1,000%. If you come to me and say, hey, there's a specific policy, a specific institution, a specific documented case of racial discrimination, I am right there with you. We should all be against racism. That's not a controversial statement. That should be common ground for every American regardless of party. But that's not what the white privilege argument does. What it does is it looks at a white person. Could be someone who grew up in a trailer park, lost their job, struggled their entire life, and tells them, you have privilege. It dismisses their lived experience entirely. It says your perspective doesn't count because of your skin color. And if that is not the very definition of prejudice, I don't know what is. You cannot fight racism with racism. You cannot fight identity politics by doubling down on identity politics. Ben is absolutely right when he calls it a cudgel and a club. That's exactly what it is. It's not an invitation to a conversation. It's a conversation stopper. It's a way to shut down debate before it even starts by making one side feel guilty for simply existing. And that, my friends, is not how a free society is supposed to function. Now here's where the Congresswoman tries to flip the script. She asks Ben about a specific campus incident. A student named Miss Dumpstone who allegedly tied a noose and sent threatening messages targeting black students. And her question is essentially, would you consider that hate speech, and would you stand with the victim? Now, Ben's honest answer is that he hadn't heard about the case. And the Congresswoman seems almost triumphant about that, like she caught him off guard. But here's what I noticed, and it's important. Ben doesn't dodge the question. He doesn't deflect. He says plainly and clearly, yes, I would stand alongside her. Yes, I condemn it. And he goes even further. He reminds her that he was literally the #1 target of alt-right harassment the previous year. The man received more anti-Semitic attacks from white nationalists than almost any other public figure in America. So the idea that Ben Shapiro is soft on racial hatred or somehow sympathetic to the alt-right is not just wrong. It is laughably, demonstrably false. This is the trap the left always tries to set. They assume that because you disagree with their framework, because you push back on critical race theory or white privilege as a concept, that you must be okay with actual racism and actual hate crimes. That is a false choice, and it's intellectually dishonest. You can reject bad ideas and reject hatred at the same time. In fact, that's exactly what real patriots do. Ben closes with a point that I think gets overlooked, but is actually one of the most important things said in the entire exchange. He draws a line between two very different situations. Number one, an administration that actively participates in suppressing speech. And number two, an administration that is trying to do the right thing and protect students from criminal threats and harassment. These are not the same thing, and conflating them is dangerous. When a university invites a conservative speaker and then allows mobs to shut it down, that is an administration failing its students and failing the Constitution. But when a university investigates and punishes someone for leaving threatening nooses or hate messages for black students, that is an administration doing its job. That is law and order. That is what we want. Those two things can coexist. Protecting free speech and punishing criminal harassment are not mutually exclusive, and anyone who tells you otherwise is pushing an agenda. Look, here's the bottom line. What you watched in this exchange is exactly what happens when facts meet feelings in the public arena. Ben Shapiro came with logic, with nuance, with a clear framework. The Congresswoman came with buzzwords and a gotcha moment that didn't land. And the reason it didn't land is because Ben refuses to be put in a box. That is the lesson here, patriots. Don't let the left define the terms of the debate. Don't accept the premise that caring about free speech means you're okay with hate. Don't let them make you feel guilty for demanding rational arguments instead of emotional manipulation. Stand your ground. Know your facts. And never, ever apologize for thinking clearly. If you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button, share this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Ben handled this well? Do you think the Congresswoman made any valid points? Let me know. I read every comment. Until next time, stay sharp, stay free, and God bless America.